But as for the question, would I recommend the book? I would recommend it, specifically to a British Bob Mortimer fan looking for an easy read. Hi, my name is Terry Russell, and welcome back to Panic at the Book Club. This week we'll be discussing The Satsuma Complex by Bob Mortimer. If you'd like to take part in this online book club, you can find out more information on how via the channel's intro video. We list the next 4 books down below and on TikTok, along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the genre that suits you best and the best time frame to read it in. We also accept your book feedback in a wide manner of ways. Comment your thoughts below a video, send in a voice note, or even send me a short video clip of you discussing the book. Alternatively, you can just send me a direct message on Instagram. Gary is a 30-year-old legal assistant with a firm of solicitors in London. To describe him as anonymous would be unfair, but to notice him other than in passing would be a rarity. But he did make a connection with a girl, but it just blew up in his face. Gary Thorne goes for a pint with a work acquaintance named Brendan. And when Brendan leaves early, Gary meets a girl in a pub. He doesn't catch her name, but he falls for her anyway. When she suddenly disappears without saying anything, the only thing Gary has to remember her by is the book that she was reading, The Satsuma Complex. But when Brendan goes missing, Gary needs to find the girl he now calls Satsuma in order to get answers. And so begins Gary's quest through estates and pie shops of South London to bring some love and excitement to his otherwise unremarkable life. Just your friendly spoiler alert that if you haven't read this book yet, I would suggest going doing that first, because beyond this point there will definitely be spoilers. I think this book has ensured that I will not accept anything of just about anyone ever again, especially food. Where do I begin with the Satsuma Complex? It was a great mixture between good character writing, great humour, and absolutely terrible descriptive writing. Bob Mortimer was able to capture the British attitude and humour amazingly well. The mannerisms and the level of banter changed depending on who it was that Gary was talking to. I don't think it would be a very good book for someone who wasn't British, simply because I think they would really struggle with that sort of humour. Like, if you didn't know any better, it would just come across as really rude. Although he was able to capture that very important element very well, I wouldn't say that I enjoyed all of the descriptors that we ended up getting. Like, the whole first page of the book was dedicated just to describing the main character's appearance. I'm all for setting a scene and getting to know characters, but show me. You don't have to spend pages upon pages describing it and telling me. It did seem to get better, but whether or not that's because of the very limited amount of characters or if it's because the writing genuinely got better, I'm not sure. But within those first 10 pages, I was very apprehensive. Like, I did honestly think, here's another author who's only published for their already established fame, when in fact there are hundreds of better writers on Wattpad of all places. It was probably a really unfair first thought, and if you can get past those first 10 pages, then you probably will enjoy it enough. It was an easy read with some genuine laugh out loud moments. Small side note, I have noticed this many times in other books, and unfortunately, I'm just calling this book out on it first. But if you can be described as 5'6", then you can't also be described as petite. Like, one of those things is not like the other, and if you're just trying to say that the character is skinny, then that's not the right use of the word petite. It just drives me mad, but little rant over. Now, Gary. Now, I'm really sorry to anyone called Gary, but much like his namesake and true to the synopsis, he was a very unremarkable character. In fact, I thought that the other two characters, Grace and Emily, were way more interesting. Like, I would have happily have read a book from Emily's troubled past, and when Grace was explaining what had happened to her granddaughter, it was genuinely moving. It was a great piece of writing, but it just didn't seem to go anywhere or serve any real purpose. But I wanted more of that. But maybe that's what made Gary such an interesting character. On the outside, he was perfectly ordinary, and then he'd start doing weird like talking to squirrels and stalking women he doesn't even know. Or he'd straight up feed people and dog biscuits. Like, I'm not even sure what's wrong with Tommy and his scalp massages. Like, I assume it was meant to be some sort of intimidation tactic, but I think I'd be too weirded out to actually be intimidated. Like, dude, get the off me. But as for the question, would I recommend the book? I would recommend it, specifically to a British Bob Mortimer fan looking for an easy read. Like, you probably will enjoy this book enough if you do like Bob Mortimer and his sense of humour. Like, it does sound like him throughout, and you can picture him saying half of the stuff in the book. Like, you might enjoy it just because of who the author is. It's definitely packed with his sort of humour and the impression of him. But if it was written by anybody else, it would probably be pretty. It had charm, and I genuinely did enjoy it. It's just the ending wasn't very surprising, and it didn't actually feel like all that much happened. And maybe it's a comment on the British laid back attitude, but when the main character is so unconcerned about the events that are unfolding, it doesn't exactly amp things up for the reader. Like, the guy was more bothered about the fact that a girl ditched him in the pub than he was about the fact that two people pretended to be police officers, told him that his friend was dead, only to find out that he wasn't in fact dead, only to then discover that he was in fact murdered. Maybe you should be more concerned about that. The book did do a really good job of creating these realistic yet totally absurd characters that could sadden you, make you laugh, or at times absolutely disgust you. Like, was it a great example of excellent literary writing? No. But I think Bob Mortimer's great sense of humour and his ability to capture the British character really was the main focus of this book. Wow, this is so blue. But let me know what you thought. Did you enjoy the book?
I recommended this book because I really like Bob Mortimer as a comedian. What I would say is that doesn't necessarily translate into being a great writer, because the writing itself was a bit unrefined, but the content was really good. And you can see that he starts to find more of a flow and confidence in his writing towards the end. There is a huge difference. I really enjoyed this book, and especially the story. It's kind of like a story of a man who is adjacent to the main plot line, but isn't actually that involved in it. So it's all rather like understated and kind of semi-coincidental sort of thing. The book itself, I would describe it as a near miss. It's so close to being absolutely brilliant, but it's just, at the moment, it's really enjoyable, and I did really like it, but it's so close to being like a brilliant book. Bob Mortimer just kind of lacks sophistication in his nonsense. So it's kind of like Spike Milligan-esque, but he just kind of lacks that refinement, is what it is. It's almost like it should be a TV show instead of a book. But if it was a TV show, it's got that like quintessential Britishness in it, that it sits in this really weird spot where it could either be absolutely absurd and done like Inside Number 9 or The League of Gentlemen, or it could be just deadpan and understated like Peep Show, and I'm not sure which way it would go. But essentially what I'm saying is it's so fundamentally British, and it's actually written correctly British is what I'd say. Even like British authors get it wrong for some reason. The main comment is the swearing is in the correct place, which might not sound like a huge thing, but is genuinely really important for just understanding contemporary British culture. Emily's chapters really gave the book more depth, and it kind of gave you a peek inside the actual main storyline that the main character isn't actually part of. And so it gave like this another dimension to the book. I really liked Emily's development because it was realistic, sensible. It kind of like touched on quite severe topics in a not too graphical or intense way to distract you or to ruin the whole chilled out vibe of the book. I really liked the appearance of Emily's ladyballs towards the end of the book. That was kind of like some really nice character growth that you could see coming, and it was really, really well done. I think, unlike a lot of the other books that I've reviewed for this channel, this one I'm probably more actually in the demographic of, hopefully towards the younger side, because this is very like a book for middle-aged British men on holiday sort of vibe. You can knock it out on an aeroplane and you'd enjoy your flight. I really enjoyed it. I would read more of Bob Mortimer's books in this style because you can see that he actually has potential to develop as a writer. Would I recommend this book? Yes.
Next week, we'll be discussing Haunting Adeline by H.D. Charlton, so don't forget to get your comments and thoughts in by Monday, the 18th of December at the latest to be a part of the discussion. You can now do this on YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram. The following week, there'll be no Panic at the Book Club. However, we will be kicking off the new year on the 2nd of January with the Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. Now, don't forget, if you do need a little bit longer to read a book, we do now list the next 4 books down below and on TikTok along with the discussion dates. That way you can choose the genre that best suits you and the best time frame to read it in. Now, thank you all for joining, and if you liked this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really means a lot, and I will see you all next week. Bye.